Okay, so here's some problems from the textbook about this, and uh, and while it's not exactly like the question on the test, it's the same on that homework quiz. It's the same idea. Okay, so they're asking me to evaluate the cosine of 120 degrees. So I'm going to find an angle of 120 degrees, which is right about there in quadrant 2. Okay, and then I can draw the reference triangle. And if this is 120 degrees, in order to find that reference angle, remember, reference angle is the angle between the terminal side and the x-axis. In this case, I'm going to subtract 120 from 180, and that leaves me a reference angle of 60. So then that lets me know that I've got a 30-60 right triangle going on. And remember, if the hypotenuse is, if it's a 30, there's a couple of ways depending on how you learned this earlier. We could do this 1 hypotenuse 2 square root of 3. And that would make this be a negative x value because that's on the negative x-axis. So if they wanted me to evaluate the cosine of 120, cosine's adjacent over hypotenuse. So that would be negative 1/2. If I were asked to find the coordinates of this point on the circle, the x would be -1, the y would be √3. Now, if you want to work on the unit circle, the only thing that's different about this is, let's see here. The unit circle means the hypotenuse is 1, which means if this is the 60-degree angle, this is half the hypotenuse times the square root of 3. So 1/2 of 1 is 1/2 times the √3 is √3/2, and this would just be half the hypotenuse because that's the side opposite the 60-degree angle. Notice we're going to get the same cosine, -1/2 over 1. It's just that the coordinates that will be half of it. So x will be -1/2. Y would be √3/2 positive. Okay, so see how that works. Now, what happens if they're giving me angles and radians? Well, the same math. You just got to remember that 30, be able to recognize that the different angles you have memorized in radians. So if I have to find the secant of pi over 3, well, let's see, pi over 3 is right here in quadrant 1. We also have to remember that pi over 3 is the same as 60 degrees. So we've got another 30-60 right triangle going on. If we want to work on the unit circle, let's not. If this is the 60-degree angle, pi over 3 angle, this will be the √3, this will be the 1, this will be the 2. What's the secant of pi over 3? Secant of 60 degrees would be 2 over 1. The coordinates of the point on the circle would be 1 square root of 3, both positive. And if we're working on the unit circle, everything gets cut in half. So 1/2 and 1/2. Okay, √3/2. Okay. How about the tangent? Let's do that tangent one. That number 31 looks promising. So I've got an angle of rotation of negative 15 pi over 4. Well, I know that's going to be more than one rotation. Remember, negative angles of rotation go clockwise. If you think about one rotation being 2 pi, but because I'm working in quarters, I'm going to rewrite my 2 pi as 8 pi over 4. So one rotation is 8 pi over 4. Let's see, if I have an angle of 15 pi over 4, I'm going to subtract 8 pi over 4. I believe that leaves me 7 pi over 4. And of course, this is still negative. Oops, why did I write over 7? And so I'm just going to keep going another 7 pi over 4. Now remember that 8 pi over 4 is one rotation. So here's 4 pi over 4. There's 6 pi over 4, because that's the same as 3 pi over 2. So 7 pi over 4 falls in quadrant 1, another negative 7 pi over 4. If that's 7 pi over 4 and one rotation, it's supposed to be a right angle. And that would leave me an angle, a reference angle of pi over 4, which is the same as 45 degrees, isosceles triangle. So if this is 1, this would have to be 1, and this would have to be the square root of 2. So that tells me that this x and y coordinate are 1 and 1 respectively. If we want to work on the unit circle, we're just going to divide everything by root 2. So that would give me x and y coordinates of 1 over root 2 and 1 over root 2. And then, of course, if we rationalize those, that's where they're getting root 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. Okay, so hopefully that'll help you work with those kind of things. They're asking you in a little bit different way, but it's the same kind of situation.